Testing. Hello. All right. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Wikiclick podcast. As always, this is Kyle Helpcamp. We had a bit of a hiatus there because of events between then and now. Family emergency, family birthdays, and big present for my grandma, where I spent countless hours scanning old photographs for her. But I should be back at this at a fairly regular pace. This is episode 8, though it should be technically episode 9. The program I was using was an internet-based webcam, which was pretty handy, quick, and intuitive. Problem being, you have to have consistent internet access in order for it to work. I think something hiccuped in our internet, and I lost the whole episode. I don't remember where the last episode started, but I do remember that it ended with the Pearl Poet. And, as always, get a bit of history in there. So let's start with the Pearl Poet, because I think that it's a good way to pay tribute to the episode that we will never see. Press have to pay respects. The Pearl Poet, or the Gawain Poet, is the name given to the author of Pearl, an alliterative poem written in the 14th century Middle English. Its author appears also to have written the poems Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Patience, and Cleanness. Some scholars suggest the author may have also composed St. Erkenwald. Save for the last, found in Harley 2250, all of these works are known from a single surviving manuscript, the British Library holding Cotton Nero AX. This body of work includes some of the most well-regarded poetry written in Middle English. Excuse me, grabbing my water. The Pearl Poet remains unidentified. Some scholarship has argued to assign the poem to one John Macy, member of the landed gentry from Cheshire. This attribution of poems of Cotton Nero AX is not widely accepted, however, reflected in the ongoing use of the labels Pearl Poet or Gawain Poet. So they don't know who this guy is, but in the 14th century, he penned a lot of these poems. Let's read some of these poems. So we know what's Pearl? Let's look at Pearl. Pearl is a late 14th century Middle English poem with elements of medieval allegory and dream vision genre. The poem is written in a Northwest Midlands variety of Middle English and highly, though not consistently, alliterative. There's a complex system of stanza linking and other stylistic features. So I think that it's interesting that they have even varieties of Middle English. They don't just have the cut and dry Middle English, they have a variety of them. A father, mourning the loss of his pearl, P-E-R-L-E, perle, which is the Middle English word for pearl, falls asleep in a garden. In his dream he encounters the Pearl Maiden, a beautiful and heavenly woman, standing across the stream in a strange landscape. In response to his questioning and attempts to obtain her, she answers with Christian doctrine. Eventually she shows him an image of the heavenly city, and herself as part of the retinue of Christ the Lamb. When the dreamer attempts to cross the stream, he awakens suddenly from his dream and reflects on its significance. The poem survives in a single manuscript, the Cotton Nero AX, which includes 2 other religious narrative poems, Patience and Cleanness, and the romance Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. All are thought to be by the same author, dubbed the Pearl Poet or Gawain Poet. Well, since we've read one, let's find out what Patience is. And in the last episode, I did read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and we will go back to it. Even though I've read it, it's a pretty good poem, and I think it's worth reading. Patience is a Middle English alliterative poem written in the late 14th century. Its unknown author, designated the Pearl Poet or Gawain Poet, also appears. Let's see, the manuscript, yada yada, we're going to see what the plot is. The narrative. The narrator, homilist, begins by praising patience, setting it among 8 virtues, which he calls blessings, are typically known as the Beatitudes in Matthew 5:3-10 from the Sermon on the Mount, which he hears in Mass one day. He closely associates it with poverty, closing with an admonition not to grudge or to fight one's fate, as Jonah did. The remainder of the work utilizes the story of Jonah as an exemplum, which is a moral anecdote. And apologies for that, I've got some friends beeping in the background. Jonah's story which illustrates and justifies the admonition to accept the will of God patiently. Jonah's story delineates his own impatience because he could not handle the burden of what he was supposed to do, preaching to the Ninevites. Notably, patience is generally paired in opposition of sloth. Medieval schools of thought would have condemned sloth, portraying negative consequences of those who fall into sloth, which essentially is the poet's trying to convey. Jonah, although written centuries prior to the poet's time, is an exemplary model of impatience, yet God still shows his loving mercy toward him, demonstrating that the love he feels for his creatures whom he has nurtured, and thus does not want to harm them. The poem ends with its opening lines. So now that we know patience, let's look up cleanness, which I guess is probably going to be very similar, paying respects to the virtue of cleanliness. Let's see. The opening lines of the poem function as a peroration, which is the system used for organizing arguments in Western classical rhetoric, in which the narrator states his theme by contrasting cleanness, and purity with filth. He also points out that God hates filth and banishes those who are not properly dressed. There's the dress code. Paraphrase of the parable of the Great Banquet follows in lines 51 to 171. Essentially, he's paying tribute to all that. Let's look up Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The talks about Arthurian. It describes how Sir Gawain, a knight of King Arthur's Round Table, accepted a challenge from a large green knight, who challenges any knight to strike him with his gold sword, if he will then take a return blow in a year and a day. Gawain accepts and beheads him with a blow, at which point the Green Knight stands up, picks up his head, and reminds Gawain of the appointed time. In his struggles to keep his bargain, Gawain demonstrates chivalry and loyalty until his honor is called into question by a test involving Lady Bertilick and the castle of the Lady of the Green Knight's castle. The synopsis. Essentially, I'm going to read the synopsis. Even though it's somewhat long, I really enjoyed it, and I think that this poem definitely should be... It's just good. It's a good poem, but a story. It's a good story. So here's the synopsis. In Camelot on New Year's Day, King Arthur's court is exchanging gifts and waiting for the feasting to start, when the king asks first to see or hear of any exciting adventure. A gigantic figure, entirely green in appearance and riding a green horse, rides unexpectedly into the hall. He wears no armor but bears an axe in one hand and a holly bough in the other. Well, a bit strange that he's not wearing any armor, but he's completely green. I guess he's a green man. Refusing to fight anyone there on the grounds that they are all too weak to take him on, he insists that he has come for a friendly Christmas game. Someone is to strike him once with his axe, on condition that the Green Knight may return the blow in a year and a day. The splendid axe will belong to whoever takes him on. Arthur himself is prepared to accept the challenge when it appears no other knight will dare, but Sir Gawain, youngest of Arthur's knights and his nephew, begs for the honor instead. The giant bends and bares his neck before him, and Gawain neatly beheads him in one stroke. However, the Green Knight neither falls nor falters, but instead reaches out, picks up his severed head, remounts, holding up his bleeding head to Queen Guinevere, while its writhing lips remind Gawain that the two must meet again at the Green Chapel. He then rides away. Gawain and Arthur admire the axe, hang it up as a trophy, and encourage Guinevere to treat the whole matter lightly. They took that, first of all, as an aside, they took that pretty calmly, given the fact that this man just picked up his own severed head, and Gawain is going to have his head cut in a year and a day. As the date approaches, Sir Gawain sets off to find the Green Chapel and keep his side of the bargain. Many adventures and battles are alluded to, but not described, until Gawain comes across the splendid castle where he meets Bertilac de Haut-Desert, the lord of the castle, and his beautiful wife, who are pleased to have such a renowned guest. Also present is an old and ugly lady, unnamed but treated with great honor by all. Gawain tells them of his New Year's appointment at the Green Chapel, and that he only has a few days remaining. Bertilac laughs, explains that the start of the path will take him to the Green Chapel less than 2 miles away, and proposes that Gawain rest at the castle until then. Relieved and grateful, Gawain agrees. Before going hunting the next day, Bertilac proposes a bargain. He will give Gawain whatever he catches, on the condition that Gawain give him whatever he might gain during the day. Gawain accepts. After Bertilac leaves, Lady Bertilac visits Gawain's bedroom and behaves seductively. But despite her best efforts, he yields nothing but a single kiss in his unwillingness to offend her. When Bertilac returns and gives Gawain the deer he has killed, his guest gives a kiss to Bertilac without divulging its source. The next day, the lady comes again, and Gawain again courteously foils her advances. And later that day, there's a similar exchange of a hunted boar for 2 kisses. Pretty good exchange rate, I suppose. Thanks to inflation, you have to give thousands of kisses for an old boar now. She comes once more in the 3rd morning, this time offering Gawain a gold ring as a keepsake. He gently but steadfastly refuses, but she pleads that he at least take her belt, a girdle of green and gold silk which, the lady assures him, is charmed and will keep him from all physical harm. Tempted, as he may otherwise die the next day, Gawain accepts it, and they exchange 3 kisses. That evening, Bertilac returns with a fox, which he exchanges with Gawain for the 3 kisses, but Gawain says nothing of the girdle. The next day, Gawain binds the belt twice around his waist. He finds the Green Knight sharpening an axe, and, as promised, Gawain bends his bare neck to receive the blow. At the first swing, Gawain flinches slightly, and the Green Knight belittles him for it. Back then, I guess men were men, and if you flinched at your own death, you were a pansy. Ashamed of himself, Gawain doesn't flinch with the second swing, but again the Green Knight withholds his full force of this blow. The knight explains that he was testing Gawain's nerve. Angrily, Gawain tells him to deliver his blow, and so the knight does, causing only a slight wound on Gawain's neck. The game is over. Gawain seizes his sword, helmet, and shield, but the Green Knight, laughing, reveals himself to be lord of the castle, Bertilac de Hautdescent, transformed by magic. He explains that the entire adventure was a trick of the elderly lady Gawain saw at the castle, who was actually the sorceress Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's sister, who intended to test Arthur's knights and frighten Guinevere to death. Gawain is ashamed to have behaved deceitfully, but the Green Knight laughs and professes him the most blameless knight in all the land. The 2 part on cordial terms. Gawain returns to Camelot wearing the girdle as a token of his failure to keep his promise. The Knights of the Round Table absolve him of blame and decide that henceforth they will all wear a green sash in recognition of Gawain's adventure and as a reminder to always be honest. That's an interesting story, I thought. The Pearl poet here, the guy that wrote the Sir Gawain, was also potentially the poem of a third or a different story, which was the it was a Saint something or another. Let's see. Apologies for this. St. Erkenwald, that was it. And that was another one I read that I really want to repeat here, because it was a pretty interesting take of the time. So, the plot summary. St. Erkenwald's storyline appears to house 2 distinct data. The poem begins with a brief historical synopsis, which describes the shift from pagan belief to Christendom. When the pagan Saxons invaded Britain, a great deal of land was destroyed, while many priests and lay people were also killed. St. Augustine of Canterbury was sent to convert the English and to purify the pagan temples. The poem goes on to state that modern-day London was then called the New Troy. From this comes an incident in the life of St. Erkenwald. Throughout the construction of a cathedral on the site of a former pagan temple, a mysterious tomb is uncovered. Adorned with gargoyles and made of grey marble, the tomb is inscribed with a series of golden characters. However, no scholar is able to decipher them. Once granted permission by the sextons, the mayor takes control of the sanctuary and tomb for further investigation. As they open the lid of the tomb, they find a preserved body and garments of a king. Puzzled by the identity of the corpse and concerned about a royal yet forgotten past, St. Erkenwald is summoned to the tomb. After Erkenwald prays, hoping to learn the identity of the body, a ghost life, which is a Middle English spelling of, I guess, spirit, specter, animates the corpse and revives it. Such a ghost life probably refers to the Christian Holy Spirit. As Erkenwald questions the corpse, it is revealed that he is a pre-Christian Briton, and once a just judge that lived during the Britain times, under the rule of King Belinus. His explanation for his royal attire is his impartial rulings throughout his time as a judge. Although he claims he was a fair and just judge, he was forced into a lewd date. Such a term most likely refers to the state of limbo due to his existence before the salvation of Christ. This reveals an underlying thread of theological questioning that pervades throughout St. Erkenwald. That being, did all before Christ go to hell? Erkenwald sheds a single tear that baptizes and consequently saves the corpse from his lewd date. With this, the corpse immediately dissolves into dust, as the soul of the man finally enters eternal peace. It's interesting that the poet had these kind of questions, and that in the 14th century, which we all consider to be kind of the dark ages of stagnant thought, they were willing to question these kinds of potentially blasphemous ideas, because the Catholic Church had a pretty strong grip on what did and did not give you salvation, and before the Catholic Church, therefore, there should have been none. So it's interesting that this kind of reached prominence. Let's look up King Belinus. Belinus the Great was a legendary king of the Britons. By the way, all those other poems I had read in the last episode, I'm now on fresh material here. Belinus the Great was a legendary king of the Britons, as recounted by Geoffrey of Monmouth. He was the son of Donbolo, brother of Brennus. He was probably named after the ancient god Belinus. Earning the crown. In an effort to win the crown of Britain, Brennus and Belinus waged war between each other to determine who should succeed their father. Many battles were fought between the two brothers, until the time came when their friends intervened and a compromise was decided upon. Belinus became the king of the Britons, with Brennus as king of the north. 5 years later, Brennus wed the daughter of the king of Norway without consulting Belinus. Belinus invaded Northumberland and seized Brennus' land. The king of Denmark with Brennus' new wife landed in Britain by accident. Belinus imprisoned them and waited the return of his brother. Brennus landed in Albany and demanded the return of all of his lands and his wife. If not, he swore he would kill Belinus if they ever met in battle. Belinus called to arms all of Britain against Brennus, and the two armies met in the forest of Calaterium. The battle was fought ruthlessly, and Belinus defeated the army of Brennus. Brennus fled to Gaul, and Belinus became king over all the Britons. He emphasized the Maumutine laws of his father and ruled justly. The Maumutine are the laws that were said to have been instituted over the Britons by Dyfnwal Mulmund. We'll click on those in a little bit. Eventually, Brennus invaded Britain behind the massive Gallic army and met Belinus on the battlefield once again. Their mother, however, convinced Brennus to make peace, and the two brothers ruled their two realms in harmony with each other. So let's look up the Maumutine laws. That's supposedly, he's an ancient legendary king, by the way, Belinus, and the historicity. I'm going to look up the historicity real quick. Rome was indeed captured by one Brennus following the Battle of Allia on the 18th of July through 390 BC. Gabius and Porsenna are not mentioned in any of the Roman sources, and the later is a namesake of Lars Porsenna, a king of the Etruscan civilization who is believed to have fought against the recently founded Roman Republic. Okay, so they're not so sure he's real. Let's see. Let's look at the Maumutine laws. The Maumutine laws were laws that have said to have been instituted over the Britons by Dyfnwal Mulmund. Very little remains known of these laws, with surviving Welsh codes simply noting that Dyfnwal's laws were largely superseded by the new codes instituted by Hywel Dda. The last name is spelled D-D-A. Hywel was said, however, to have retained Dyfnwal's units of measurement. Legendary accounts. We'll see what the... We're going to look up some of these laws. Okay, so some of these laws are listed. There are 3 tests of civil liberty: equality of rights, equality of taxation, and freedom to come and go. 3 things are indispensable to a true union of nations: sameness of laws, rights, and language. There are 3 things free to all Britons: the forest, the unworked mine, the right of hunting. There are 3 property birthrights of we're seeing a fairly consistent pattern of 3s here. 3 property birthrights of every Briton: 5 British acres of land for a home, the right of suffrage in the enacting of laws, the male at 21, the female on her marriage. There are 3 things which every Briton may legally be compelled to attend: the worship of God, military service, the court of law. There are 3 things free to every man, Briton or foreigner, the refusal of which no law will justify: water from a spring, river, or well, firing from a decayed tree, a block of stone not in use. There are 3 classes which are exempt from bearing arms: bards, judges, graduates in law or religion. These represent God and his peace, and no weapon may ever be found in their hands. There are 3 persons who have a right of public maintenance: the old, the babe, the foreigner who cannot speak the British tongue. There are 3 things free to a country and its borders: the roads, the rivers, and the places of worship. These are under the protection of God and his peace. So that's pretty cool. Let's look up the Dyfnwal units of measurement, Dyfnwals, which redirects to the Welsh units. So we've got a barley corn. 3 barley corns equals 1 inch. An inch, what's that? Just joking, I'm American. I use inches because I'm of the superior people. 3 inches equals 1 palm. 3 palms equals 1 foot. 3 feet equals 1 pace. 4 feet equals 1 short yoke. 3 paces equals 1 leap. 8 feet equals 1 field yoke or a second yoke. 12 feet equals 4 paces or 1 lateral yoke. 3 leaps equals 1 land. 16 feet equals 1 long yoke. 1,000 lands equals 1 mile. Huh. Okay, so they pretty weird measurements. We're going to look up the, there's a link here talking about the Edwardian Conquest. Let's click on that, the Conquest of Wales by Edward I of England. Conquest of Wales by Edward I, sometimes referred to as the Edwardian Conquest of Wales, took place between 1277 and 1283. It resulted in the defeat and annexation of the Principality of Wales and the other remaining independent Welsh principalities by Edward I, King of England. By the 13th century, Wales was divided between native Welsh principalities and the territories of the Anglo-Norman Marcher lords. The leading principality was Gwynedd, whose princes had gained control of the greater part of the country, making the other remaining Welsh princes their vassals, and had taken the title Prince of Wales. Although English monarchs had made several attempts to seize control of the native Welsh territories, it was not until Edward's war of conquest against Llywelyn ap Gruffudd, or Llywelyn the Last, that this was achieved on a lasting basis. Let's look up the causes of war. Henry III died in 1272 and was succeeded by his son Edward I. Whereas Henry's ineffectiveness had led to the collapse of royal authority in England during his reign, Edward was a vigorous and forceful ruler and an able military leader. In 1274, tension between Llywelyn and Edward increased when Gruffydd ap Gwynwyn of Powys and Llywelyn's brother. Why did I click on an article where Wales was mentioned? I knew this was going to happen. Let's see. Llywelyn's younger brother, Dafydd ap Gruffydd, defected to the English and sought Edward's protection. Because of the continuing conflict with the Marcher lords and Edward's harboring of defectors, when Edward demanded that Llywelyn come to Chester in 1275 to do homage to him, Llywelyn refused. For Edward, a further provocation came when Llywelyn's planned marriage to Eleanor, daughter of Simon de Montfort, the leader of a rebellion against the crown during the reign of Edward's father. In November 1276, Edward declared war on Llywelyn. However, his objective was to put down a recalcitrant vassal rather than begin a war of conquest. Okay, so it doesn't seem like it started off with conquest, but one thing leads to another, and by God, if you're partying, you don't want the party to stop. Let's click on an article that's a little bit easier to read. Let's actually look up Edward I, King of England. I haven't really intrigued by the kings of England, just because it's interesting to imagine what it must have been like, A, during their time, but B, to be super wealthy in a time that we look back as being relatively impoverished. Like, I'm fairly certain that the poorest on our streets today in America probably have access to way more wealth than the richest did but a couple hundred years ago. You know, they might not have a home, but they have access to vaccinations, and go to libraries and access the internet, which is all collective human knowledge. Think about how quickly they had to send a message. You wanted to send a message up to the, 1,000 miles, it would take weeks. Nowadays, it takes microseconds. Let's see. Edward I, also known as Edward Longshanks and Hammer of the Scots, was King of England from 1272 to 1307. Before his ascension to the throne, he was commonly referred to as the Lord Edward, the first son of Henry III. Edward was involved early in the political intrigues of his father's reign, which included an outright rebellion by the English barons. In 1259, he briefly sided with the baronial reform movement, supporting the provisions of Oxford. After reconciliation with his father, however, he remained loyal throughout the subsequent armed conflict, known as the Second Barons' War. After the Battle of Lewes, Edward was hostage to the rebellious barons, but escaped after a few months and joined the fight against Simon de Montfort. Montfort was defeated at the Battle of Evesham in 1265, and within 2 years the rebellion was extinguished. With England pacified, Edward joined the Ninth Crusade to the Holy Land. The crusade accomplished little, and Edward was on his way home in 1272 when he was informed that his father had died. Making a slow return, he reached England in 1274 and was crowned at Westminster on the 19th of August. He spent much of his reign reforming royal administration and common law. Throughout an extensive legal inquiry, Edward investigated the tenure of various feudal liberties, while the law was reformed throughout a series of statutes regulating criminal and property law. Increasingly, however, Edward's attention was drawn toward military affairs. So we learned there that he headed off to do a little bit of conquest. All right. Let's see. What can we click on here? Let's look up Ninth Crusade. There were many crusades. The Ninth was certainly one of them. The Ninth Crusade, which is commonly grouped with the Eighth Crusade, is commonly considered to be the last major medieval crusade to the Holy Land. It took place in 1271 to 1272. Louis IX of France's failure to capture Tunis and the Eighth Crusade led Henry III of England's son Edward to sail to Acre in what is known as the Ninth Crusade. The Ninth Crusade saw several impressive victories for Edward over Baibars. Ultimately, the Crusaders were forced to withdraw, since Edward had pressing concerns at home and felt unable to resolve the internal conflicts within the remnant Outremer territories. It is arguable that the crusading spirit was nearly extinct by this period as well. It also foreshadowed the imminent collapse of the last remaining Crusader strongholds along the Mediterranean coast. Crusader spirit. Looks like the Crusade. So there's a list of crusades here on the list, and I kind of want to click on the Children's Crusade, because the Children's one is one of the more popular ones, and I know actually a little bit about it because I saw a documentary, and I'm therefore an expert. The Children's Crusade was a disastrous popular crusade by European Christians to regain the Holy Land from the Muslims, said to have taken place in 1212. The Crusaders left areas of northern France led by Stephen of Blois, and Germany led by Nicholas. The traditional narrative is likely conflated from some factual and mythical events, which include visions by a French boy and a German boy, an intention to peacefully convert Muslims to the Holy Land to Christianity, bands of children marching to Italy, and children being sold into slavery. All these nice little peaceful story-like ideas, and then the last one, and children were sold into slavery. Many children were tricked by merchants and sailed over to what they thought were the Holy Lands, but in reality were slave markets. Wah, wah. Let's see. Accounts. The variants of the long-standing story of the Children's Crusade have similar themes. A boy begins to preach in either France or Germany, claims that he has been visited by Jesus, who instructed him to lead a crusade in order to peacefully convert Muslims to Christianity. Through a series of portents and miracles, he gains a following of up to 30,000 children. He leads his followers south toward the Mediterranean Sea, in the belief that the sea would part on their arrival, which would allow him and his followers to walk to Jerusalem. This does not happen. The children are sold to two merchants, Hugh of the Iron and William of Poscares, who give free passage on boats to as many of the children as are willing. The pilgrims are then either taken to Tunisia, where they are sold into slavery by the merchants, or else die in a shipwreck on San Pedro Island off Sardinia during a gale. A few may have failed to reach the sea and die or give up from starvation or exhaustion. They had been betrayed by some of the adults in their group. According to more recent researchers, there seem to have been actually two movements of people of all ages in 1212 in Germany and France. So it seems like we got two different ideas, and it does seem like, from what I understood, you had Nicholas of Cologne in Germany, who claims to have had a vision, but kind of people were like ignoring him. And then Stephen of Cloyes in France, and people were kind of more receptive to him. I think that the one in France actually got to meet with the Pope. No, maybe it was the first one. Yeah, it was the guy in Cologne, Nicholas of Cologne. He and a few loyal followers continued to the Papal States, where they met Pope Innocent III. The remaining ones departed for Germany after the pontiff exhorted them to be good and to return home to their families. Nicholas did not survive the second attempt across the Alps. Back home, his father was arrested and hanged under pressure from angry families whose relatives had perished while following the child. So I guess they weeded out that bloodline by killing the father. Yikes. Look at Pope Innocent III. I love these old medieval pictures of people, by the way. They look so goofy. It's like they were trying to reconcile a 3D image into a 2D space, and rather than giving perspective like we commonly associate with more Renaissance pictures, and they tried to like unfold the human face onto a 2D surface. Pope Innocent III, born Lotario di Conti di Signy, anglicized as Lothar of Signy, reigned from the 8th of January 1198 to his death in 1216. Pope Innocent was one of the most powerful and influential of the medieval popes. He exerted a wide influence over the Christian sect of Europe, claiming supremacy over all of Europe's kings. He was central in supporting the Catholic Church's reforms of ecclesiastical affairs throughout his decretals and the Fourth Lateran Council. I'm going to click on the Catholic Church. I was actually raised Catholic. The Catholic Church, also known as the Roman Catholic Church, is the largest Christian church with approximately 1.3 billion baptized Catholics worldwide as of 2016. As one of the oldest religious institutions in the world, it has played a prominent role in the history and development of Western civilization. The church is headed by the Bishop of Rome, known as the Pope. Its central administration, the Holy See, is in the Vatican City, an enclave within Rome, Italy. Okay, so the Holy See is the administration of the Catholic Church, whereas the Pope is the Bishop of Rome. Okay, I think I can understand that. Catholic theology is based on the Nicene Creed. The Catholic Church teaches that it is the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, founded by Jesus Christ, that its bishops are the successors of Christ's apostles, and that the Pope is the successor to St. Peter, to whom primacy was conferred by Jesus Christ. It maintains that it practices the original Christian faith, reserving infallibility passed down by the sacred tradition. The Latin Church, the 23 Eastern Catholic churches, and institutes such as the mendicant orders and enclosed monastic orders reflect on a variety of theological and spiritual emphasis in the Church. Of its 7 sacraments, the Eucharist is the principal one, celebrated liturgically in the Mass. The Eucharist is the little host they give. You put on your tongue and eat the body of Jesus and you drink his blood. The Church teaches that through consecration by a priest, the sacrificial bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ. The Virgin Mary is venerated in the Catholic Church as a Mother of God and Queen of Heaven, honored in dogmas and devotions. Its teaching includes sanctification through faith and evangelization of the gospel, as well as Catholic social teaching, which emphasizes voluntary support for the sick, the poor, and the afflicted through the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. The Catholic Church is the largest non-government provider of education and healthcare in the world. That's pretty cool. That's very nice. The Catholic Church, obviously the Catholic Church isn't perfect, and I think everyone knows of the scandals, but that's pretty cool. I did not know that they were the largest non-government provider of education and health, which makes sense. You want to reach all the audiences in the world, and once you get there, you want those audiences to be educated and healthy. I know the stereotype with religious people, they want to keep you dumb, but truthfully, being raised Catholic, they put a huge emphasis on education, and in fact, I think that because we had church school on Sundays, I had more homework from church school during my confirmation year than I did from the counterpart in my actual 5 days a week school. The Catholic Church has influenced Western philosophy, culture, science, and art. Catholics live all over the world through missions, diaspora, and conversions. Since the 20th century, the majority reside in the southern hemisphere due to secularization in Europe and increased persecution in the Middle East. That makes sense. I know that Africa is actually becoming extremely Catholic. And then you have South America, which is like, you can't sneeze without hitting 30 Catholics. The Catholic Church shared communion with the Eastern Orthodox Church until the East-West Schism in 1054. Disputing particularly the authority of the Pope, as well as with the Oriental Orthodox churches prior to the Chalcedonian Schism in 451 over differences in Christology. The Reformation of the 16th century resulted in Protestantism breaking away. From the late 20th century, the Catholic Church has been criticized for its doctrines on sexuality, its refusal to ordain women, as well as the handling of sexual abuse cases involving clergy. So let's click on some of these. I know of the East-West Schism, but I don't know what caused it. Let's look up the Chalcedonian Schism. The Council of Chalcedon was a church council held from the 8th of October to the 1st of November, 451, at Chalcedon, which is in Asia Minor. It's located almost directly opposite Byzantium. The council is numbered as the fourth ecumenical council by the Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and most Protestants. Oriental Orthodoxy churches do not agree with the conduct and proceedings of the council, commonly calling it Chalcedon the Ominous. Several Oriental Orthodox Church historians have viewed the council as a power dispute by the Church of Rome, having special patriarchal status among other churches. The Oriental Orthodox churches have seen this as the key factor contributing to the Great Schism. Let's see. Is there a history background? The Council of Chalcedon was convened by Emperor Marcian, with the reluctant approval of Pope Leo the Great, to set aside the 449 Second Council of Ephesus, which was named the Latrocium or Robber Council by Pope Leo. The Council of Chalcedon, let's see. Okay, so it's not really going to give much here. Oh, relics of... Bit about relics. Oh, just a schism, it seems. Just one of many schisms. Let's click on, let's look up where this Chalcedon is. Because I'm a little here. I need to focus more, I think, on geography and a little less on history. And, because, you know, if I'm going to get those Jeopardy questions that night, I've got to get some geography knowledge in me. All right. Chalcedon, sometimes transliterated as Chalcedon, was an ancient maritime town of Bithynia, Bithynia in Asia Minor. It was located almost directly opposite Byzantium, south of let's see. It is now a district of the city of Istanbul named Karakoy. The name Chalcedon is a variation of Chalcedon, found on all the coins of the town as well as in manuscripts of Herodotus' histories, Xenophon's Hellenistica. Let's look up Herodotus, because I've heard of him before. He's an ancient Greek historian who was born in Halicarnassus in the Persian Empire. He is known for having written the book The Histories, a detailed record of his inquiry. He is widely considered to have been the first writer to have treated historical subjects using a method of systematic investigation. I think I actually covered him in another podcast. Holy cow, I make podcasts and I'm already doing repeats. This is absurd. Let's see. There's a mention here about the Nile. I'm going to click on the Nile because, again, more geography. I got to get that geography in me. The Nile is a major north-flowing river in northeastern Africa and is commonly regarded as the longest river in the world, though some sources cite the Amazon River as the longest. Okay, so we're getting a little bit of an argument here, a little tizzy. The Nile, which is 4,258 miles long, is an international river, as its drainage basin covers 11 countries, namely Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, Republic of the Sudan, and Egypt. In particular, the Nile is the primary water source of Egypt and Sudan. Let's look up South Sudan, because I believe that they're one of the newest countries in the world. South Sudan, officially known as the Republic of South Sudan, is a landlocked country in East Central Africa. The country gained its independence from the Republic of Sudan in 2011, making it the newest country with widespread recognition. Its capital and largest city is Juba. South Sudan is bordered by Sudan to the north, Ethiopia to the east, Kenya to the southeast, Uganda to the south, the Democratic Republic of Congo to the southwest, and the Central African Republic to the west. It includes the vast swamp region of the Sud, formed by the White Nile and known locally as Bahr al-Jabal, meaning the mountain sea. Alright, let's see. The Nilotic peoples form the majority of its population. Alright, let's scroll down, let's see. I'm going to read off a little bit of stats here to the right. Let's see. The population in the 2016 estimate is about 12,230,730, which is a kind of an estimate. Density is about 34.5 per square mile. Its GDP is only about 18.435 billion, and per capita is only about $1,420 per. So they're not very good in terms of human development. And even the HDI, which is the Human Development Index, puts it at 187, very, very low. Which apparently they've had, after winning independence, they've pretty much been embroiled in a civil war ever since then, it seems. And it's going to be hard to be well developed. Let's look up the HDI. Of course, you've got some bright green, or very, very high. Let's see what the number one is. Apparently, there are dimensions and calculations. There's old methods and new methods. The new method uses life expectancy at birth, education, which means the years of schooling, and expected years of schooling, and a decent standard of living, which is the GNI per capita, gross national income. So they got this equation here, and I kind of disagree with that. I don't think that you have to go to school in order to live a very well-developed life, because a school is only formal education. Whereas if you have a population that, culturally speaking, enjoys educating themselves throughout their life, I think that you're going to wind up not necessarily needing that. But um, we'll look up what some of these places. Of course, you got the Scandinavians, Norway's, Switzerland, Australia, Ireland. I'm going to read until I get down to the United States. Germany, which has gone down one. Oh, wait. 2018 rankings. Change in rank. Yeah. So Germany's gone down at 1 in rank. So it used to be above Ireland, now it's below. Then you have Iceland at number 6. Hong Kong, which has gone up 1. It's tied with Sweden. Singapore, Netherlands, Denmark, Canada. Ooh, Canada. They beat us by .002. That's right. Canada's number 12. We're number 13. And it says that we've gone down 1 too. Gross. Scroll down so you see all these higher ones. And then, let's see. You've got inequality adjusted HDI, which is a measure of the average level of human development of people in a society once inequality is taken into account. So I guess once you take that into account, America falls to number 25. Not bad, not the greatest. Obviously, you want to do better, but I live a pretty comfortable life. Everyone I know lives a comfortable life, and those that don't, there are resources out there, but I understand they're not comprehensive and wide-reaching. Let's look up the. Does it not have? Oh, I was hoping that we had a full list. I wanted to see the full list of, because then we could look up the very, very, very bottom of the list. Oh, it says the 2010 Human Development Report introduced. Okay, so the inequality adjusted human development was introduced in 2010. Okay, I see. We have got a version of lists. Man, you got a lot of lists. Let's look up some African countries, because let's be real, the lowest one's going to be in Africa. Just because Africa is such an impoverished continent that even though Asia is probably going to have its fair share, as well as South America, you're going to have. So you got high human, the Seychelles, which they're not as good as America. Some of these, aren't as good as America. They got high human development. The Seychelles, the Mauritius, Algeria, Tunisia. And I say high, but these are in world rankings. They start at 62. And then you've got medium, then you got low. At the very bottom, you've got Niger, which I remember when I was a kid, I was in class, and one of the kids read off. We were discussing and learning about Africa, and he was reading about it, and he mispronounced Niger in a very socially fatal way. I won't repeat it here because, again, socially fatal. Niger. Let's look up Niger, because I've always wondered, I think it would be hove of me to kind of learn more about Africa and the countries. It's a landlocked country in West Africa, named after the Niger River. Niger is bordered by Libya okay, we're not going to follow the border, but over 80% of its land area lies in the Sahara Desert, probably why it's a very low-developed country. The country's predominantly Islamic population of about 21 million mostly clusters in the far south and west of the country. The capital is Niamey, located in Niger's southwest corner. And I'm looking at a map here. Niger kind of looks like a looks like a fish, really, and a fish swimming up. I guess based on the way the camera's looking, a fish swimming up. And there's absolutely nothing up here, and then down here's the fin. And all the cities are kind of down there, which makes sense. Niger is a developing country, which consistently ranks near the bottom of the United Nations Human Development Index. It was ranked 187th of 188 for 2015 and 189th out of 189 in 2018. Much of the non-desert portions of the country are threatened by periodic drought and desertification. The economy is concentrated around subsistence, with some export agriculture in the more fertile south, and export of raw materials, especially uranium ore. Niger faces serious development due to its landlocked position, desert terrain, inefficient agriculture, high fertility rates without birth control, and the resulting overpopulation. The poor education level and the poverty of its people, the lack of infrastructure, the poor health care, and the environmental degradation. Good Lord. It seems as if they're being beset on all sides by woe and famine. Let's see. Looking it up, I want to see the GDP. So they've got 21.65 billion per capita, $1,153. It's not that great. Let's look up desertification. And I know a little bit about this. I had a class on earth sciences, which I actually did fairly well in. But desertification is a type of land degradation in which a relatively dry area of land becomes increasingly arid, typically losing its bodies of water as well as vegetation and wildlife. It is caused by a variety of factors, such as through climate change, particularly global warming, and through the overexploitation of soil through human activity. When deserts appear automatically over the natural course of a plant's life cycle, then they can be called a natural phenomenon. However, when deserts emerge due to rampant and unchecked depletion of nutrients in soil that are essential for it to remain arable, then a virtual soil death can be spoken of, which traces its cause back to human overexploitation. Desertification is a significant global ecological and environmental problem. And I'm looking at a map here of areas affected and lots of vulnerability. There's a pictures here of Lake Chad also, and picture from 1973, it's massive. 1987 is much smaller. 1997 is even smaller than that. 2001, it's barely a puddle. It says Lake Chad in a 2001 satellite image with the actual lake in blue. The lake has shrunk by 94% since the 1960s. That's unreal. Let's see. Areas affected. Drylands occupy approximately 40 to 41% of Earth's land area and are home to more than 2 billion people. It has been estimated that some 10 to 20% of drylands are already degraded, the total area affected by desertification being between 6 and 12 million square kilometers. About 1 to 6% of the inhabitants of drylands live in desertified areas, and that 1 billion people are under threat from further desertification. As of 1998, the then current degree of southward expansion of the Sahara was not well known, due to a lack of recent measurable expansion of the desert into the Sahel at the time. The impact of global warming and human activities are presented in the Sahel. In this area, the level of desertification is very high compared to other areas in the world. All areas situated in the eastern part of Africa, the Sahel region, are characterized by dry climate, hot temperatures, and low rainfall. Only about, putting this in millimeters, 300 to 750 millimeters of rainfall per year. Some studies have shown that Africa has lost approximately 650,000 square kilometers of its productive agricultural land over the past 50 years. The propagation of desertification in this area is considerable. Some statistics have shown that since 1900, the Sahara has expanded by 250 kilometers to the south, over a stretch of land from west to east, 6,000 kilometers long. That's crazy that it's just getting that big that quickly. And some of the causes, you got some grazing, field tilling. There's some preventative measures. Anti-sand shields in the North Sahara, which are kind of streaks of trees planted along a hill, looks like, at risk of... I guess that plants are your best ally in preventing desertification. Let's see. Let's look up desert greening, because that's at the bottom is related. Desert greening is a process of man-made reclamation of deserts for ecological reasons, biodiversity, farming, and forestry, but also for reclamation of natural water systems and other ecological systems that support life. The term desert greening is intended to apply to both cold and hot, arid and semi-arid deserts. It does not apply to ice-capped or permafrost regions. Desert greening has the potential to help solve global water, energy, and food crises. It pertains to roughly 32 million square kilometers of land. So there's all sorts of various ways to do this, where you maintain the land that you've got already, you retain floodwaters, plant trees, permaculture, live more sustainably, preventing overgrazing and deforestation, planting trees with dew and rain harvesting technology, like the Groasis water box. I'm going to look that up. That's interesting. I've never heard of that. It's a device designed to help grow trees in dry areas, invented by Dutch former flower exporter Peter Hoff, and won the Popular Science Green Tech Best of What's New Innovation in the year 2010. Let's see. It's a polypropylene bucket with a lid, a vertical tunnel in the middle for two plants. A wick allows water from inside the box to trickle into the ground via capillary action, which capillary action is how trees actually get water up to the top of their leaves. If you ever cut a tree, or ever look at a tree and you wonder, well, I know that water starts in the roots, but how does it go up? It goes up because capillary action. There are very, very, very tiny holes, little tubes in the tree, so small you can't see them with the naked eye. And the water will, because of surface area magic with water, travel up it. The device mimics the insulating effect bird feces provided to germinating seeds. The box's lid is covered by tiny papillae, which create a super hydrophobic surface due to the Lotus Effect. What is the Lotus Effect? I'm going to look at the Lotus Effect. Oh, well, the Lotus Effect refers to self-cleaning properties that are a result of ultra-hydrophobicity. So if you ever pour water on a lotus, it pools on there, and it doesn't soak in like most leaves. You can tell that the water looks like little mercury beads when poured on a lotus leaf. And dirt, because of that, rather than soaking in, dirt particles are picked up by... That's pretty cool. Looking at the time here, we've gone about an hour, and I think that it's time that I kind of close shop for the day. So what did we learn? Well, we started off on the Pearl Poet because I, as mentioned, wound up losing the last podcast where we ended up with the Pearl Poet. We read a little bit of excerpt of Patience and Cleanness, which were two different poems praising the both of those virtues. The only surviving copy of any of this is in a single codex. I'm thinking that it's probably this guy wrote praises to the other virtues, but they were just lost to time. But we'll never know. Read about St. Erkenwald, where they discussed the issues of salvation for those who died before Christ came. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is what he was most famous for, this mysterious pearl poet, and discussed the virtues of chivalry. From there, the last one we read was St. Erkenwald. And then St. Erkenwald was a judge during the legendary King Belenus. And then Belenus was the one that was legendary King of the Britons and had a brother Brenius, and the two duked it out, but Belenus pretty much owned him. Belenus followed the Malmutine laws, which were the laws that had been instituted over the Britons by Dyfnwal Mulmud. And these were the ones that had three. These were the three tests of civil liberty: equality of rights, equality of taxation, freedom to come and go, etc. These were all put in places of threes. From there, I went to the Welsh units and made fun of their crazy units like an inch, a foot, what? A mile? Who? From there, I went to the Conquest of Wales by Edward I, where it started off with just him having a military conflict with the leader of Wales, and one thing led to another, and that wound up to Wales losing sovereignty. From there, obviously, the natural place to go would be Edward I of England, who was the man leading behind it. Edward I of England went on the Ninth Crusade. In 1272, he went there, learned his father had been killed, or died, and meandered back over the course of about a year and a half before being crowned at Westminster. The Ninth Crusade, which was kind of dying down at that point, the crusading spirit was nearly extinct at that period. And then on the side there were lists of crusades. I clicked on the Children's Crusade, and that was the one where two different children, two different countries, both Germany and France, claimed to have seen Jesus, and that they wanted a rally of people to help fight the crusade. And Nicholas of Cologne, I think, of Germany, was the more successful. He led a large group of people down to the Mediterranean, believing that it would split for them, allowing them to walk to the Holy Land. It never happened, but he did get to meet with Pope Innocent III, who told him to, go back to your home and live with your family. He never wound up getting back across the Alps. It said did not survive his trip across the Alps, and then back home, his father was arrested and hanged, I guess because his son was a nutter, and he lost a lot of people following this little cult leader. Pope Innocent III was a very, very influential pope during the medieval period, and was actually said to be one of the more powerful ones, where he kind of ironed out some of the reforms of the Catholic churches. He just kind of ironed out some reforms. He was a strong man, by God. I clicked on the Catholic Church from there, and it's, as of 2016, has 1.3 baptized Catholics worldwide. No idea how many of those are practicing, but numbers are there. From there, I clicked on the Council of Chalcedon, which is one of the schisms within the church. Churches have had some major ones. Everyone's heard of the anti-popes and the breakaway of the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox Church. But Council of Chalcedon, I was a little bit curious about that, so I clicked on that, and it turns out that, I don't know, I guess did Jesus have a beard or did he not have a beard? One side says yes, one side says no, and they broke away. No, the Chalcedon, they believed that the Roman Church was kind of gaining too much power, and that many of their doctrines were power grabs, and so they were a little bit miffed about that. From there, I clicked on Chalcedon, which was an ancient town where this council took place. Currently, Chalcedon exists as a district in the city of Istanbul. The district's new name is Kadıköy. From there, I went to Herodotus, which I think I've actually covered in another podcast. So, we only had to get 8 in, technically 9, but I'm not salty. 8 podcasts in before we had a repeat. From there, I went down to him because he discusses Egypt. And then I clicked on the Nile because, I do need to get a bit more refreshed with my geography. The Nile, flowing northward, goes from Lake Victoria up through Uganda, South Sudan, Egypt, and then empties into the Nile, but it also meanders between multiple countries and branches off into multiple countries. From there, I clicked on South Sudan because South Sudan, I remember, was one of the most recent countries, formed in 2011, and it's very, very low on the Human Development Index, which makes sense because ever since it won its independence in a hard-fought war, it's had a hard-fought war within the country as a civil war. Clicked on the Human Development Index, which has a methodology of reporting on how developed a country is based on its population, etc. And it takes into account education, money, and lifespan at birth. From there, I went to a country-specific HDI list. I went to African countries, so I was a little bit curious about the lowest ones, and I knew that the lowest one would be in Africa. And sure enough, The lowest one is Niger, with a perfect human development index score would be a 1. I believe that um, Norway has like a .933. Niger's is a .354. So I went to Niger, read a little bit about it, and it turns out that the reason that they're probably not that well developed is because the Sahara Desert takes up about 80% of their country. They're kind of forced to live in the bottom southwest portions of the country, and because of this, lack of education is also an issue. Lack of resources, lack of infrastructure. They pretty much lack it all. Um, it's being affected by desertification, which is the process by which normal landscapes succumb to deserts, become deserts, and deserts through soil depletion and over farming and logging will turn to desert. We saw that by the way, in America a little bit during the Dust Bowl. We wound up counteracting that pretty quickly, but had we not, we would have wound up with the desert in the Great Plains area. From there, I went to desert greening, which is the process of reclaiming deserts, and hopefully we can, make inroads there. And then I followed it up with the Groasis water box, and that is a water box it's essentially a device that was invented to help kind of mimic some of the ideal growing conditions for plants, and hopefully reclaim some of the desert. And then after that, I looked up, because the surface says that it's coated with ultra hydrophobicity, aka the Lotus Effect. And I clicked on the Lotus Effect, and that's a lotus leaf, and the process that it's able to ward away water. So looking at the time, it's about 1 hour and 7 minutes. Guys, I thank you so much for watching. I'm using a new program here, so hopefully it works out. And as always, this is Kyle Hellcamp. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!